It was early morning at the Army base when James Cooper opened his eyes. His body felt very hot, but this wasn't like any normal fever. He was a young soldier, only 23 years old, and had never felt this way before. The base was mostly quiet. Some soldiers were still sleeping while others were getting ready for breakfast and morning exercise. Cooper tried to get out of bed, but his legs were so weak that he could barely walk. He had to hold onto the wall to reach the bathroom. When he switched on the light and looked in the mirror, he almost screamed. His skin was glowing. Not very bright, but enough to see a soft blue light coming from it, like a glow stick at a party. He touched his face with trembling hands. The skin felt warm and slightly bumpy. "This can't be real," he whispered to himself. He turned on the tap and splashed water on his face many times, hoping the glow would go away. But nothing changed. The strange blue light stayed on his skin. Cooper remembered what had happened yesterday. 3 of his friends from the same Army unit had gotten sick. They were now in the Army hospital, and no one was allowed to visit them. No one knew what was wrong with them. As Cooper walked back to his bed, he saw something strange in the hallway. There was a security camera on the wall, the kind that records everything happening in the building. Usually, this camera had a small red light that stayed on all the time, but today the light kept going on and off, like a broken torch. He had seen the same thing happening to the cameras near the hospital yesterday. Suddenly, his head started spinning badly. The hallway seemed to move around him and everything went dark. Cooper fell to the floor before he could reach his bed. An hour later, Quinn Chen found Cooper lying on the floor. She was a lieutenant, a higher-ranking officer who was in charge of checking the soldiers' rooms every morning. The first thing she noticed was how cold the room was. The heating was turned up to full power, but it felt like a freezer inside. When she knelt down to check if Cooper was alive by feeling his pulse on his neck, something very strange happened. Her fingers felt a tingling sensation, like when you touch a balloon that's been rubbed on your hair. In all her years in the Army, she had never experienced anything like this. Chen quickly took out her radio and called for doctors to come help, but while she waited, she noticed more weird things. Cooper's skin was now glowing brighter than before. The blue light was getting stronger and weaker in a pattern, like a heartbeat. She wanted to take a video with her phone to show the doctors, but as soon as she tried to record, her phone died completely. This wasn't surprising anymore. All electronic devices had been acting strange around the sick soldiers. Then she heard shouting from other buildings. More soldiers were getting sick. The Army doctor had already called for help from the CDC, a special government organization that deals with dangerous diseases, but they would take several hours to arrive. Chen walked to the window and saw something that scared her. Hundreds of birds were flying away from the Army base all at once. It was like they could sense that something bad was about to happen. As the sun came up, Chen saw more unusual things. The grass around the buildings had changed color. It was now silver instead of green. This reminded her of something that happened last week. Cooper and his friends had been training at night when they saw mysterious lights in the sky. Everyone had laughed when they told this story, thinking they were just tired or imagining things. Now Chen wondered if those lights had something to do with what was happening. She took out an old paper notebook and started writing down everything she saw. She knew it was important to keep track of all these strange events, especially since they couldn't trust their computers or phones anymore. They kept breaking down for no reason. Chen didn't know it then, but she had just discovered the beginning of something huge. Soon she would learn secrets that would shock everyone. Secrets about science, about nature, and about what their own government had been doing to its soldiers in secret. But for now, all she could do was watch and write as more and more soldiers began to glow. By afternoon, things at the Army base got much worse. 20 more soldiers started glowing, and the Army hospital was full. The doctors were confused because they had never seen anything like this before. They tried giving the sick soldiers normal medicines for fever, but nothing worked. The soldiers' skin just kept glowing brighter and brighter. The Army doctor, Dr. Wilson, was a short man with gray hair who had treated soldiers for 30 years, but today his hands were shaking as he checked the patients. Every time he touched a sick soldier, his medical tools stopped working. Thermometers showed impossible readings, like body temperatures so cold the soldiers should have been dead. But they were alive, just getting stranger by the hour. "Lieutenant Chen, come look at this," Dr. Wilson called out. Chen walked over to Cooper's bed. The young soldier was awake now, but he couldn't speak. Instead, strange patterns of light moved across his skin, like waves in the ocean. "Watch what happens when I turn off the lights," the doctor said. When the lights went out, everyone gasped. The 6 soldiers were all glowing in different colors now: blue, green, and even purple. Their lights pulsed together like they were somehow connected. Outside the hospital, the base commander, Colonel Richards, was talking on the phone in his office. He was a tall, strict man who usually had answers for everything, but now, his face was white with fear. "Yes, sir, I understand," he kept saying into the phone. "But how could this be happening? We followed all the safety protocols during the night exercise." When he saw Chen walking past his office, he quickly hung up the phone. "Lieutenant Chen," he called out, his voice shaky, "I need you to do something very important. Go to Building 7 and get all the files about last week's night training. Bring them directly to me. Don't look at them, and don't tell anyone about this." Chen noticed how nervous the colonel looked. His hands were trembling as he wrote down the security code for Building 7. Building 7 was different from the other buildings on the base. It was smaller, with no windows, and had more security cameras than the others. When Chen reached the building, she saw that all the cameras were dead, their lights completely off. The security pad by the door was still working, though. She typed in the code, and the heavy metal door opened with a loud buzz. Inside, the air smelled strange, like ozone after a lightning storm. The filing cabinets were all locked, but Chen found the right key on the ring the colonel had given her. As she opened the drawer marked "Night Operations, Classified," a paper fell to the floor. Even though the colonel had told her not to look, she couldn't help reading it. What she saw made her stomach turn. The paper had a strange logo she had never seen before, a black triangle with words written around it: Project Starlight, Human Enhancement Division. Below that was a list of soldiers' names, the exact same soldiers who were now sick and glowing. There were notes about exposure times and radiation levels, but most shocking was a small note in red ink at the bottom: Test subjects responding as expected. Proceed to Phase 2. Suddenly, Chen heard footsteps coming down the hallway. She quickly put the paper in her pocket and grabbed the rest of the files. But before she could close the drawer, the lights in Building 7 began to flicker wildly. Through the window in the door, she saw something that made her freeze. 3 tall figures in white hazmat suits, carrying strange equipment that hummed and glowed with the same colors as the 6 soldiers. Chen ducked behind a filing cabinet, her heart pounding. She knew she had just discovered something she wasn't supposed to see. The soldiers weren't sick with any natural disease. They were part of some kind of secret experiment. But who were these people in hazmat suits, and what had they done to her fellow soldiers? Chen held her breath behind the filing cabinet. The people in hazmat suits walked into the room, their boots making heavy sounds on the floor. They carried strange machines that looked like nothing she had ever seen before. The machines made a soft humming noise and gave off a light that was exactly like the glow coming from the 6 soldiers. "The infection is spreading faster than we planned," one of them said. Their voice sounded strange through their mask, almost robotic. "We need to move to Phase 3 immediately." "But the subjects aren't ready," another person argued. "Their bodies are still adjusting to the first exposure. If we push too fast, we might lose them all." Chen's phone suddenly vibrated in her pocket. Her heart jumped. She had forgotten to turn it off. The hazmat suits turned toward the sound. Chen knew she had to move fast. She crawled slowly between the filing cabinets, staying in the shadows. The strange machines they carried started beeping louder, like they could sense her presence. Just when she thought they would catch her, all the lights in Building 7 went out completely. In the darkness, she could see that the hazmat suits were actually glowing too, very faintly, with the same blue color as Cooper's skin. Taking advantage of their confusion, Chen ran out of the building, clutching the stolen files to her chest. She ran straight to her office and locked the door. Her hands were shaking as she opened the files. Inside, she found more shocking information. There were pictures of strange pieces of metal that had been found in the forest near the base 3 months ago. The metal had unusual properties. It glowed in the dark and seemed to affect electrical equipment. The Army scientists couldn't identify what it was made of. Then she found something even more disturbing, a report about the night training exercise. It wasn't really a training exercise at all. The soldiers had been deliberately sent to an area where these strange metals had been placed. The report called it Project Starlight, Phase 1, Initial Exposure. While Chen was reading, someone knocked on her door. "Lieutenant Chen, it's Dr. Morris from the CDC. We need to talk." Dr. Morris was a young woman with thick glasses and a serious face. She had arrived with a team of disease experts, but they seemed more interested in the soldiers' glowing skin than in treating them. "Something very strange is happening here," Dr. Morris said, closing the door behind her. "Our equipment keeps failing, but before it does, it shows readings that should be impossible." Chen decided to trust Dr. Morris and showed her the files. As the doctor read them, her face got paler and paler. "This is incredible," she whispered. "They're not sick, they're changing. But into what?" Suddenly, they heard shouting from the hospital building. They ran outside and saw something impossible. Cooper and the other 6 soldiers were standing in formation, their skin glowing so bright it hurt to look at them. Their eyes had changed too. They were completely silver, with no pupils. Colonel Richards was there trying to give them orders, but they didn't seem to hear him. All the soldiers raised their arms at the same time, pointing at the sky. The air felt heavy with electricity. In the distance, they could hear the sound of helicopters approaching. Chen looked up and saw black military helicopters coming toward the base. But before they got close, something even stranger appeared in the sky. A large, dark triangle shape that blocked out the stars. Dr. Morris grabbed Chen's arm. "We need to get those files somewhere safe," she said urgently. "The world needs to know what they've done here. This isn't just about the Army anymore. I don't think those metals were from Earth at all." Just then, Chen's phone started working again. She quickly took pictures of every page in the files. As she did, Cooper and the other glowing soldiers began to walk in perfect unison toward Building 7. The ground trembled with each step they took, and every electronic device on the base went crazy. Computers turned on by themselves, alarms started ringing, and cars in the parking lot had their lights flashing. Chen and Dr. Morris watched in amazement and fear. Whatever was happening to these soldiers, whatever the Army had exposed them to, it was changing them into something that wasn't quite human anymore. And now, Chen realized, she and Dr. Morris might be the only ones who could expose the truth, if they could stay alive long enough to do it. The black helicopters got closer to the base, their spotlights scanning the ground. Chen and Dr. Morris quickly hid behind some trucks in the parking lot. From there, they could see everything that was happening. The glowing soldiers stood perfectly still, their silver eyes fixed on the dark triangle shape in the sky. Colonel Richards ran out of his office, waving his arms at the helicopters. "Stand down! We have the situation under control," he shouted into a radio. But the helicopters didn't turn away. Instead, more trucks started arriving at the base. Big black ones with no military markings. Men in black uniforms jumped out, carrying weird-looking weapons that hummed like the machines in Building 7. "Those aren't regular Army forces," Dr. Morris whispered to Chen. "Look at their badges." The men wore patches showing the same black triangle that was on the secret files. As they spread out across the base, Cooper and the other glowing soldiers finally moved. But they didn't run or fight. They simply walked forward, ignoring the shouts and warnings from the men in black. Suddenly, Private Cooper spoke. His voice sounded strange, like many people talking at once. "The process cannot be stopped," he said. All the other glowing soldiers spoke the same words at the same time, their voices echoing across the base. "We are becoming what we were meant to be." The men in black raised their weapons, but something incredible happened. All the strange guns stopped working. They sparked and smoked in their hands. The glowing soldiers kept walking forward, and now the ground really shook with each step they took. The concrete cracked under their feet, and small stones floated up into the air around them. Chen remembered something from the files and quickly pulled them out. "Look at this," she showed Dr. Morris. "The metal they found. It says here it responded to human thoughts. They weren't just exposing the soldiers to it, they were trying to merge it with them somehow." Before Dr. Morris could answer, the dark triangle in the sky moved lower. It was huge, bigger than any aircraft Chen had ever seen. It made no sound at all. The glowing soldiers all raised their hands toward it, and beams of blue light shot down from the triangle surrounding them. Colonel Richards came running toward the soldiers, his face red with anger and fear. "This isn't what was supposed to happen," he yelled. "The project was meant to make better soldiers, not this." But Cooper and the others didn't even look at him. Their bodies were starting to float off the ground, lifted by the strange blue light. Chen's phone was working again, and she recorded everything. The men in black were retreating now, scared of the power they couldn't control. Dr. Morris grabbed Chen's arm tightly. "We need to get closer," she said. "Those soldiers, I don't think they're being controlled. I think they're transforming into something else, something that was planned a long time ago." They crept closer, hiding behind parked cars. The glowing soldiers were now floating several feet in the air. Their skin had become almost transparent, with what looked like moving metal under it. Cooper turned his silver eyes toward Chen and spoke again. "Lieutenant Chen, Dr. Morris, come with us. The truth is bigger than you know." To everyone's shock, more trucks started arriving at the base. But these were different. They had news channel logos on them. Someone had called the media. Colonel Richards looked terrified. "Stop them," he shouted at the men in black. "No one can see this." But it was too late. The news crews were already filming. The glowing soldiers floated higher, their light growing stronger. The dark triangle lowered itself further, and now everyone could see it clearly. It wasn't like any human aircraft. Its surface moved like liquid metal, the same kind of metal described in the secret files. Chen looked at Dr. Morris. "What do we do?" she asked. But deep down, she knew they only had two choices. They could stay and expose the truth about what the Army had done, or they could accept Cooper's invitation and learn an even bigger truth about where that strange metal really came from and what humanity was about to become. The news cameras kept rolling as bright lights flashed across the night sky. Chen looked at her phone. The video she was recording was actually working now, as if the glowing soldiers wanted everything to be seen. All across the base, hundreds of people stood frozen, watching the incredible scene above them. Dr. Morris made her decision first. "We have to go with them," she said to Chen. "These soldiers, they're trying to tell us something important." She stepped forward into the blue light. Instead of hurting her, the light gently lifted her off the ground. Chen took a deep breath and followed. The light felt warm and tingly, like standing in gentle sunshine. Colonel Richards started screaming into his phone. "Launch the fighters! Shoot them down!" But as soon as he said this, every phone on the base, including his, floated out of people's hands. The phones gathered in the air and burst into tiny sparkles of light like fireworks. As Chen floated higher, she could see more news vans arriving. Police cars and curious people from the nearby town were also gathering outside the base. The men in black had given up trying to stop anyone. Some of them were even running away, jumping into their trucks and speeding off. Now floating at the same height as Cooper and the other soldiers, Chen could see them clearly. Their skin wasn't just glowing anymore. It looked like liquid metal, flowing and shifting like mercury. But their eyes were kind, not scary. Cooper smiled at her and his voice sounded more normal when he spoke this time. "Let me show you what they've been hiding for the past 50 years, Cooper said. He held out his hand, and a small piece of metal appeared in it. It moved and changed shape, forming tiny pictures that told a story. Chen and Dr. Morris watched in amazement. The pictures showed how the Army had found the first piece of strange metal in 1974, in a forest after a mysterious light appeared in the sky. Scientists discovered that the metal could respond to human thoughts, but they kept it secret. They spent years studying it, trying to figure out how to use it, but they didn't understand that the metal wasn't just a tool. It was alive in its own way, waiting for the right time. "The metal chose us," Cooper explained. "The Army thought they were running experiments on us, but really they were helping the metal find the right people. People who could help humanity take its next step forward." Suddenly, the dark triangle above them opened up. Inside, it was full of beautiful shifting lights. Cooper turned to the news cameras below and spoke loudly so everyone could hear. "What you're seeing isn't an invasion or an attack. It's an invitation. Humanity has reached a point where it needs to change, to become something better. We're here to help that change happen." Dr. Morris gasped as she understood. "The plague wasn't a sickness at all," she said. "It was evolution." More blue beams of light shot down from the triangle, but they didn't hurt anyone. Instead, they projected huge pictures in the sky, showing incredible things. Cities where people and technology lived in perfect harmony. Worlds where there was no pollution or war, and ways of traveling through space that no one had ever imagined. The glowing soldiers spread out in a circle, and their light grew even brighter. Below them, the news reporters were broadcasting everything live. Millions of people around the world were watching as Cooper spoke again. For years, governments have hidden the truth, thinking humanity wasn't ready. But we can't wait any longer. Our world is in danger, from climate change, from war, from our own mistakes. We need to change, and we need to change now. Chen looked down at the base below, then up at the amazing lights above. She understood now that she wasn't just witnessing a military secret being exposed. She was watching the beginning of something much bigger. A moment that would change human history forever. The question wasn't just about keeping secrets anymore. It was about what humanity could become. But even as she thought this, she saw more military planes approaching in the distance. Someone in power had decided that this truth was too dangerous to be revealed. Now Chen, Dr. Morris, Cooper, and the others had to make another choice. How to convince a scared world that this change wasn't something to fear, but something to welcome. The military planes came closer, their engines roaring in the night sky. But Cooper and the other glowing soldiers stayed calm. They raised their hands together, and something amazing happened. A gentle dome of blue light appeared over the entire base like a giant bubble. When the planes tried to fly through it, they couldn't. They just slid around it, like boats on water. Down below, more amazing things were happening. The news reporters discovered that their live broadcasts were being picked up everywhere, even in places where there was no internet or TV signal. People in every country could see what was happening at the base. Phones all over the world started showing the same images, no matter what people were doing with them. "Look," Dr. Morris pointed at the ground. The grass that had turned silver was now spreading, making beautiful patterns across the earth. But it wasn't killing the plants. Instead, the trees and flowers touched by the silver light grew stronger and healthier. Even the air around the base seemed cleaner and fresher. Chen watched as Cooper floated down to talk to the scared people below. His body still looked like flowing metal, but when he spoke, his voice was kind and human. "We want to show you something," he said. He touched the ground, and the silver grass formed a large, flat screen of light. On it, images began to play. The images showed Earth's future if nothing changed. Oceans full of plastic, cities underwater from melting ice, and wars fought over the last clean water and food. But then the images shifted, showing another possible future. Cities with gardens growing on every building, cars that ran on light instead of gas, and machines that could clean the oceans and air. "The metal we merged with," Cooper explained to the crowds, "it's like a key that can unlock humanity's next step. It doesn't control us or change who we are. It helps us become better versions of ourselves." To prove this, Cooper invited a young girl from the crowd to step forward. She was maybe 10 years old and walked with crutches. Her mother watched nervously as Cooper knelt beside her. A small piece of the liquid metal flowed from his hand and touched the girl's leg. Everyone gasped as the metal spread like gentle waves, then disappeared into her skin. The girl's legs glowed softly for a moment, and then she could walk normally. Her mother burst into happy tears. The metal doesn't just heal, Dr. Morris explained to the news reporters. It fixes things at their deepest level. It could heal our planet too. She showed them how the silver grass was already cleaning pollution from the soil and air around it. But not everyone was happy about these changes. More army trucks were arriving, and Chen could see government officials in dark suits talking frantically on their phones. Colonel Richards was still trying to take control of the situation. "This is a military secret," he shouted. "These soldiers are government property. What they're doing is illegal." Cooper turned to him with sad eyes. "We were never your property," he said, "and the time for secrets is over." Suddenly, the dark triangle above them sent down hundreds of small lights. Each light carried a tiny piece of the special metal. The lights spread out across the crowd, touching people who reached out for them. Those who were sick or injured began to heal. Old people felt younger and stronger. It wasn't changing who they were. It was helping them become healthier, better versions of themselves. Chen watched as Dr. Morris studied the metal with her scientific tools. "It's not just advanced technology," she announced. "It's like it knows exactly what each person or thing needs to get better." But then Chen noticed something worrying. Colonel Richards and some of the men in black were unpacking large boxes behind their trucks. Inside were weird-looking weapons, different from the ones that had failed earlier. They looked old, like they had been kept hidden for a long time. "Those must be weapons they made from the first pieces of metal they found," Chen said to Dr. Morris. "We have to stop them before they hurt someone." They had to act fast. The colonel was right about one thing. This was a moment that would change everything. But it wasn't just about keeping secrets anymore. It was about choosing between fear and hope, between staying the same and becoming something better. And Chen knew they couldn't let fear win. Colonel Richards and his men started setting up their strange old weapons. The guns were made of dull gray metal and had blue lights flickering inside them, just like the pieces of metal they'd found years ago. But something was wrong with these weapons. They looked twisted and angry, like the metal had been forced to do something it didn't want to do. Chen remembered something from the secret files and quickly told Cooper, "Those weapons, they made them by hurting the metal, forcing it to change shape." Cooper nodded, his silver eyes sad. "The metal remembers," he said. "It remembers 50 years of being cut apart, tested, and forced to hurt others." Dr. Morris was helping more people who wanted to touch the healing lights. She turned to Chen with worried eyes. "We need to protect these people," she said. "They're all live on TV right now. The whole world is watching. If something bad happens..." Before she could finish, Colonel Richards fired one of the weapons. It shot out an angry red beam, very different from the gentle blue light of Cooper and the others. But instead of hurting anyone, something incredible happened. All the pieces of friendly metal, in the soldiers, in the newly healed people, even in the grass, started glowing brighter. The red beam stopped in midair. It twisted around and formed into a ball of light. Inside it, everyone could see images of what had happened in secret underground labs over the past 50 years. They saw scientists cutting the metal, trying to force it to become weapons. They saw failed experiments and people getting hurt. The metal was showing everyone its memories. Cooper walked toward Colonel Richards, his feet floating slightly above the ground. "The metal forgives you," he said gently. "It understands you were scared. Humans often try to turn new things into weapons because they're afraid. But that's not what this gift is for." More news helicopters arrived, their cameras zooming in on everything. People all over the world were sending messages on their phones, sharing what they were seeing. Many were asking to be part of this change. The silver grass had spread beyond the base now, healing the earth wherever it went. Suddenly the old weapons started to change. The angry red lights inside them turned blue. The metal was remembering its true purpose. It flowed out of the weapons, leaving them as empty shells. Colonel Richards dropped his gun, falling to his knees. He looked tired and old. "I was just following orders," he whispered. "We thought we had to keep it secret, had to control it. We were wrong." Chen walked over to him and helped him stand up. "It's not too late to make things right," she said. "Help us tell the truth. Help us show people they don't need to be afraid." The dark triangle in the sky began to pulse with rainbow colors. More pieces of friendly metal floated down, but this time they formed into beautiful shapes in the air: trees, flowers, and butterflies made of light. Children in the crowd laughed and reached up to touch them. Dr. Morris was typing quickly on her tablet, which was working again now. "The metal isn't just changing people," she announced excitedly. "It's connecting them. Look." She showed them readings from her scientific equipment. The metal was creating a network, letting people share thoughts and feelings without speaking. A small boy who had just been healed spoke up, his voice full of wonder. "I can feel what the trees feel," he said. "I can feel the earth getting better." But just then they heard more planes coming. These weren't regular military planes. They were bigger, and they came from different countries. The whole world was responding to what they were seeing on TV. Some might want to help, but others might still be scared. Cooper turned to Chen and Dr. Morris. "Now comes the hard part," he said. "We have to show them that this change is for everyone, not just a few. We have to prove that humanity is ready to take the next step, together." The sun was starting to rise over the base. This was no longer a story about a mysterious plague or a military secret. It had become a story about humanity's choice: to stay the same and let fear control them, or to change and grow into something more wonderful than they had ever imagined. As the morning sun lit up the sky, planes from different countries circled above the base. News reporters said that emergency meetings were happening at the United Nations. World leaders couldn't decide if this was a threat or a miracle. Some wanted to attack, while others wanted to learn more. Chen noticed something beautiful happening in the crowd below. People who had been healed by the metal were changing in more ways. A deaf woman could suddenly hear music in the wind. A blind man could see colors he never knew existed. But they weren't just getting better. They were understanding each other in new ways. "Everyone, join hands," Dr. Morris called out. She had discovered something amazing on her instruments. "The metal doesn't just heal our bodies. It helps us feel what others feel. It helps us understand each other." People in the crowd held hands, forming a big circle. As they did, the silver light flowed between them. Suddenly, they could feel each other's hopes, fears, and dreams. A woman who had been angry at her neighbor for years suddenly understood why he always played loud music. He was lonely, and the music made him feel less alone. A teenager who fought with his parents felt their love and worry for him. People who spoke different languages could understand each other without words. Cooper and the other glowing soldiers floated down and joined the circle. Through the metal's connection, they shared what they had learned. They showed everyone how the metal had come from far away, sent by beings who had gone through the same changes long ago. These beings hadn't sent it as a weapon or a way to control Earth. They had sent it as a gift, waiting for humans to be ready to change. "Look!" someone shouted, pointing at the TVs in the news vans. All around the world, more pieces of the friendly metal were appearing. The silver grass was growing in cities and forests everywhere. In poor areas where people didn't have clean water, the metal cleaned it. In places where the air was dirty, it made it fresh again. But the most amazing thing was happening with children. They were the first to understand what the metal could really do. A group of kids from the crowd stepped forward, their eyes glowing softly. They showed everyone how they could talk to plants and animals now. They could feel the Earth's pain from pollution, but they could also feel its joy when things got better. "The children will lead us," Cooper said, smiling. "They don't have the fear that adults have. They just want to make things better." Suddenly, all the planes circling above them started having trouble with their engines. Not because the metal was attacking them, but because it was trying to talk to the pilots. One by one, the pilots could feel what was happening below. Many of them landed their planes and joined the crowd. Dr. Morris was excited about something else she found. "The metal doesn't just connect us to each other," she explained. "It connects us to the Earth itself. It's like the planet has been waiting for us to wake up and understand that we're all part of it." Chen watched as Colonel Richard slowly walked toward Cooper. The old colonel had tears in his eyes. "I've been guarding this secret for 30 years, he said. "We were so wrong. We thought we had to control it, to use it for power. but it was trying to help us all along. The dark triangle in the sky started showing more images. It revealed how the metal had been quietly watching humanity for centuries, waiting for the right time. It had seen humans invent amazing things, but also hurt each other and the earth. Now it was offering a chance to fix those mistakes. Just then, Chen's phone buzzed. Messages were pouring in from around the world. People everywhere were sharing stories of healing and connection. But there was also news of some governments and powerful companies trying to stop it. They were scared of losing control. Cooper turned to everyone and spoke. "What happens next is up to all of you. The metal can heal our world and help us grow, but only if we choose to accept it. Only if we're brave enough to change." The crowd was getting bigger. More news teams arrived. The whole world was watching. Now they all had to decide. Would they let fear stop this amazing change? Or would they be brave enough to help humanity take its next big step forward? News was coming in from every country. In some places, people were dancing in the streets as the healing metal reached them. In other places, scared leaders were trying to stop it. But something unexpected was happening. The more they tried to fight it, the more people wanted to understand it. A group of doctors had joined Dr. Morris. They were amazed by what they saw. "The metal doesn't just heal diseases," one doctor explained on TV. "It fixes the reasons why people get sick in the first place. It's like it knows exactly what every person needs." The children in the crowd made an important discovery. A little girl named Quinn, who was only 8 years old, showed everyone how to talk to the metal with their minds. "You have to be kind when you talk to it," she said. "It can feel if you're afraid or angry. It wants to be your friend." Cooper and the other glowing soldiers created a big circle of light. Inside it, they showed pictures of what Earth could become. Cities would have trees growing on every building. Cars would float silently without polluting the air. The oceans would be clean again, full of healthy fish and coral. But the best part was how people would live. No more wars, no more fighting over food or water, because everyone would know how to share and help each other. "But what about our jobs, our money, our way of life?" someone in the crowd asked, worried. Chen stepped forward to answer. "Look at Colonel Richards," she said, pointing to where the colonel was helping a family understand the metal's healing power. "He spent 30 years keeping this secret, thinking he was protecting everyone. Now he's helping people change. We don't have to lose who we are. We just become better at being ourselves." Dr. Morris made another exciting discovery. "The metal isn't just on Earth," she said, showing everyone her computer screens. "It's in space too. It's been waiting on other planets in our solar system. Once we're ready, it can help us explore space in ways we never imagined." The dark triangle in the sky opened up wider, revealing beautiful colors and shapes. Through the metal's connection, everyone could feel that it wasn't a spaceship in the way they thought. It was like a seed planted long ago, waiting for humanity to grow enough to understand it. Suddenly, all phones and computers started working in new ways. Instead of just showing pictures and words, they showed people's feelings and thoughts. A mother in China could talk to her daughter in Brazil like they were in the same room. Children from different countries played together in spaces made of light. But the biggest change was happening in people's hearts. Through the metal's connection, they could feel how everyone else lived. Rich people felt what it was like to be poor and hungry. People who had been angry at other countries could now understand their fears and hopes. It was hard to hate someone when you could feel their love for their family, just like yours. The silver grass had spread to every continent now. Deserts were turning green. Dead coral reefs were coming back to life. Even the air was getting cleaner. You could see it changing color as the metal helped clear away pollution. Cooper floated up high so everyone could see him. "The change has begun," he said, "but there's still more to come. The metal doesn't just want to fix our problems. It wants to help us become what we were always meant to be. Creatures of light and love who can travel among the stars." Chen looked at her phone one last time, before it transformed into something new and wonderful. On every screen around the world, people could see the truth. This wasn't an invasion or an attack or even a plague. It was Earth's invitation to join something bigger than themselves. a chance to become part of a universe full of wonders they had only dreamed about. But first, they had to make the final choice, and time was running out. The moment of final choice came faster than anyone expected. All around the world, the metal had spread its gentle light, but in some places, scared people were still trying to fight it. They launched missiles, dropped bombs, and tried to build walls. But something wonderful happened. The weapons turned into flowers. The walls crumbled and became gardens. The metal wasn't fighting back. It was transforming fear into beauty. Dr. Morris made one last discovery that changed everything. "Everyone, look at this," she called out. Her new instruments, now merged with the metal, showed something amazing. The Earth itself was waking up. The metal wasn't just a visitor from space. It was helping Earth remember what it used to be, long ago before humans existed. The ground started humming softly. People everywhere could feel it through their feet. The silver grass formed huge circles all over the planet, and in the middle of each circle, beautiful towers of light grew up toward the sky. These weren't buildings made of metal and concrete. They were living things, growing from the Earth's memory. Cooper gathered all the children together. They had learned to use the metal better than anyone else. "Show them," he said gently. The children joined hands and created a huge picture in the sky. It showed Earth's story, not just human history, but the planet's own memories. Everyone saw how Earth had once been part of a great network of living planets. The metal was helping it rejoin that family. Chen watched as Colonel Richards walked up to one of the towers of light. His body started glowing too, but he wasn't scared anymore. "I understand now," he said. "We thought we were protecting humanity by keeping secrets, but humanity needed to grow up and join the rest of life out there." The dark triangle in the sky wasn't alone anymore. All across the solar system, more shapes appeared. On Mars, Venus, and even floating around Jupiter. Earth wasn't just changing, it was waking up the whole solar system. Then something happened that no one expected. The moon started glowing with the same silver light. Through their new connection, everyone could feel that the moon was happy. It had been waiting too, lonely for billions of years, waiting for Earth to remember. Dr. Morris's instruments showed one more surprising thing. The metal wasn't changing human DNA or controlling minds like some people had feared. Instead, it was helping humans use parts of their brains they had never used before. "We're not becoming aliens," she explained. "We're finally becoming fully human." The children led everyone in the final step. Around the world, people joined hands. The silver light flowed through everyone, connecting them not just to each other, but to every living thing. Trees, animals, the Earth itself. Through this connection, they could all feel the truth. They weren't losing anything. They were gaining a whole universe. Cooper smiled as the last of the old weapons turned into flowers. "The plague that everyone feared," he said, "it was just the beginning of our healing. The sickness wasn't in our bodies. It was in the way we lived, separate from each other, separate from nature, separate from our own true selves." Chen looked up at the sky, which was now full of beautiful colors no one had ever seen before. The stars looked closer, like old friends waiting to welcome Earth back. Through the metal's connection, everyone could feel other living worlds out there, happy that Earth had finally woken up. The change was complete, but it was also just beginning. Humanity had chosen to grow up, to join the great family of life that filled the universe. The mysterious plague hadn't wiped out the regiment. It had helped them lead the way to humanity's next great adventure. As the sun set on this new Earth, the towers of light glowed softly. Children played in fields of silver grass that cleaned the air as it grew. Former enemies shared meals and stories, understanding each other at last. And up in the sky, the dark triangle opened like a flower, revealing paths to new worlds, new discoveries, and new ways of being human. It wasn't the end of the world, as some had feared. It was just the end of being alone. Earth was awake, humanity was growing, and the stars were waiting with open arms. The mystery was solved, but the real story was just beginning.